All right, hi, welcome everyone. I'm Mark Carpel. I'm on the board of Northampton Neighbors, and I'm part of the group that puts on these talks. Before I introduce Paul Schull, today's speaker, I want to share some coming attractions. Now, you may see some things going on your screen, and I, in fact, may disappear and become a disembodied voice. That's because there are some complications in setting up the stuff that Paul wants to show us today. Coming attractions. On September 11th, Catherine Baker, former president and current executive committee member of Northampton Neighbors, will read from and discuss My Journey, How One Woman Survived Stalin's Gulag by Olga Slyazberg, which Catherine translated from Russian to English. Who knew? On September 25th, Judy Dixon, former tennis pro and Billie Jean King's doubles partner and winningest tennis coach in UMass history, will tell us about suing Yale University and winning the first ever settlement under Title IX against a major university on behalf of women's athletics. She'll also tell us a little about the behind the scenes life of a tennis pro and about how she's been able to compete at the highest level into her 70s. And on October 9th, yours truly will talk about people who work mostly alone, sometimes for decades, using materials considered trash by other people to create monumental, unique outdoor environments. We hope you'll join us for all of those. Now, a word about the logistics for today. Nina Kleinberg, our Zoom impresario, will mute everyone during Paul's talk. He'll talk for about 25, 30 minutes. You'll be able to send questions to Paul by typing them into the chat feature of Zoom, which is on the bottom center of your screen. Click on that and you can type in a question. We suggest waiting until Paul's done talking because we've found that often speakers answer the question while they're speaking before it's even been asked, but you're free to type in a question anytime you want. When Paul's finished, I'll read some of them for Paul to answer, all of them if we have time. And if we have enough time, we'll unmute everyone and wave your hand if you want to ask a question out loud. Paul Schull is an editorial, travel, and documentary photographer who lives in Northampton. His work has appeared pretty much everywhere. New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, Popular Science, with United Press International. Overseas, his work has been featured in Der Spiegel, the China Post, and the Independent. In fact, one year, one of his photographs of whale hunting appeared in over 120 newspapers in England, including the politically diametrically opposed Daily Express and the Independent.
Diametrically opposed, pretty good, Mark.
If you've ever picked up the in-flight magazine on United Airlines, or less probably Air Greenland, you might have seen one of his pictures. As a travel photographer, he's on the staff of Go Nomad. He's contributed to National Geographic Traveler, Johnny Jet, Roads and Kingdoms, and Endless Vacation. Closer to home, he was on staff of the Valley Advocate for 25 years, and his work has appeared in the Boston Herald, the Boston Phoenix, and Business West. He's collaborated with Professor Tom Jurovich on documentary works, and two recent exhibits are part of the permanent collection of historic Northampton. Paul works extensively with United Way of Hampshire County. He lives in a barn that is rumored to have been a speakeasy frequented by the likes of William Powell and Rudolph Valentino, no less.
True.
And I have it on good authority that he plays a mean blues harmonica. Paul will take us on a virtual journey around the world, show some images from a new piece in the Massachusetts Review, share some tips for getting that perfect shot, and talk about how he's adapted his process to our changing world. Paul, it's yours.
Okay, folks, I want to say, as I go through this process of sharing my screen and getting this up, people can ask me any questions that they want. If they're technical questions, I am happy to do that. So I thought I would start within our Happy Valley, which I love so much. And I'm going to show you some images from a new piece that's coming out in the Massachusetts Review called Local Lockdown. I know that Pam Glavin, the art director of that magazine, is here. And the image you're seeing now is the first image that I took. And it's an image of Dave at, this will be the cover of the Mass Review. And on March 5th, I had had a shoulder surgery for rotator cuff. It's my second one. It's the result of carrying too many heavy cameras around the planet. And I lost the use of my arm and my hand, but I could use a cell phone. And this was the first image actually that I had taken after about 3 months of recovery. Now, so I want to emphasize that you can use cell phones and they're pretty good for static images. And Dave here, and what I've done with this is try to make an effort to highlight the essential workers in our area, and just the people that have kept us all going. Dave is the owner of Pop's Liquor Store. It's a very important cornerstone of my neighborhood. Everybody knows Dave. Dave knows everybody. He's behind glass here, and a fantastic guy. And again, the first image that I took when I felt like I could start shooting images again. This is Alligator Farm, Hadley asparagus. I love this woman. If you notice, she's wearing an asparagus mask. But again, one of those people that was brave enough to get out and keep everything going, as was this worker at Valley, the Valley River Valley Co-op. And I do remember at first going out, everything seemed frightening. It seemed scary to do the most normal of things. And I found myself really appreciative of the people that were working there. This next image is Dr. Fred Kim at the Valley Medical Center, and Fred's taken a lead role in dealing with the COVID stuff. And this was at a COVID test site, and just his dedication to his patients has been really inspiring to me. And I was very honored that he agreed to be part of this process. And again, Fred has his own challenges here in Northampton. This is the only one of 2 masks that Fred has to wear 8 to 9 hours a day. However that's happened in this country, it's terrible, but it is. And it's guys like Fred that are keeping us all going. After all of this, when Black Lives Matter happened, protests is really where I cut my teeth during the anti-war movement, anti-nuclear movement. My mother had brought me out in a baby carriage to go fight wars when I was young. And it's something that I was not going to not do. This is a picture of a Trump rally that was held on Calvin Coolidge Bridge. And as I had lost my arm and my hand, and Pam Glavin had contacted me after seeing the picture of Dave at Pops and asked me about doing this series, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it. Even though the cell phone is good for static portraits, it's not fast enough to capture images as they're happening. And half of this, being a photojournalist, is really getting a sense of what people are going to do before they do it, and anticipating what's going to happen when and where. I knew I couldn't use a cell phone. I was trying to figure out how the heck I was going to use my camera. I just couldn't pick it up with my right hand, which I've been doing for 30 years. So I purchased a vertical grip for the bottom of my camera, which has a shutter button on the side. And if I turn the camera upside down and photograph with my left hand, I could make it work. So all of the images you're going to see now during these protests were shot upside down, which I just found kind of appropriate for this topsy-turvy world that we're living in. And then I flipped everything else over in Photoshop after I did it. On this bridge, I only could physically last at this point. I knew I was not going to be able to be there for about 10 or 20 minutes. I just couldn't take it physically. It hurt quite a bit. So what I did is figure out where the image was going to happen and get there and anticipate it. And people had been driving over the bridge. And I'm quite proud of that image and that I captured the interaction between these two people. This image is from a student march in Northampton, Mass. It was a fairly large march, and I thought these students everybody was pretty damn peaceful, and it was a very moving time, and a moving time for a largely white community to become involved in the Black Lives Matter movement. I was quite proud of them. This next image is from an event in Easthampton, Massachusetts, that was called Easthampton Kneels. And I found it a very good event. There were some people that were disturbed by the event. They didn't think it enough. And I heard Tel Avivan people telling this Black family that they shouldn't be doing it. It's a longer story, but in the long run, I think proved to be a very effective event. This next image I'm showing you is from Amherst, Mass. And the white silence equals violence sign became very important. And I think I actually found the whitest people that I could. There was a very somber mood about all of these events as I was shooting them. And it became a kind of a new thing for me in a way where people are becoming very, very concerned over having their images taken now for fear of retaliation from the government. A lot of my work is done via kind of nonverbal communications. I have conversations with people where a word is never said. And suddenly everybody was wearing a mask. And I'm just fascinated by the amount of communication I could have with people simply through their eyes. This is also a woman from in Amherst. She was one of the speakers that was there. And just seeing where I'm at. This is, I think, the last large rally, and I think the largest rally that I have seen in Northampton, Mass. And it really was a fantastic, fantastic event. And these are people surrounding the police station there. And again, actually, this was also taken with a cell phone, with a panoramic cell phone. I think it worked out quite well. I also wanted to show just normal everyday life and the difficult and the neighbor to neighbor and beautiful things that were happening as COVID began hitting us all. This is an image which is from Natick, Massachusetts, and it's the birthday of a 97-year-old woman. And she's seeing a friend of hers that she hadn't seen for many a year. And it was a beautiful moment in very difficult times. A fantastic birthday. The feeling here was just fantastic. And this woman was the teacher that had taught most of her 8 children. It was a spectacular, spectacular time. There were also difficult times this was a funeral in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Not a tragic funeral in that it was a 94-year-old woman. She had lived a good life. But the tragedy really was that they were not able to see her for the last 2 months of her life. Image, as a photographer, it's a challenge for how to approach this. And a lot of it's just through personal interaction and gaining trust of people to that you're going to do the right thing. It's a very private moment. We ended these are not all the images from the Master Review, and I encourage you all to go out and get it. It'll be out, I believe, on September 15th. I'm certainly looking forward to it. We ended that with this picture from Gloucester, Mass. And the Stay Wicked Apart, I'm glad there's still some humor Still, and I'm glad you laughed at that, Mark. I can hear you. This actually, you know, I put out a lot of images on social media. This image got shared over 1,400 times on Facebook, and it really just seemed to hit a funny nerve from people in the Boston or Massachusetts area. And I think it was quite an appropriate way to end the article in the Mass Review. So I encourage you all to go out and get it. I'm going to start showing some travel photos. We'll take a little trip around the world, but I wanted to start here in Northampton, Mass. And these next pictures are actually a couple of pictures of the Summit House. And what I'd really try to do is to tell a story with the images. And there's just a sense of wonder here with this little girl and possibility. And it could be anywhere. And the stories that could be told, it leaves it up to the viewer's imagination. And it's a beautiful spot. That's the Summit House. Now these next two images this was an image right down the street from my house. And I have to say that travel is really a state of mind. I engage in my same practices locally as I do when I am out in the world. And part of that is really being aware of the weather. And this was a passing storm. I had anticipated there was going to be a rainbow and drove as fast as I could down there to see what I could catch. I've always wanted to catch an image of a rainbow hitting the Summit House. I'm kind of amazed that I actually did. This next image, which I just think is beautiful, if I'm allowed to say. Again, I knew I had been watching the weather. If you're a Facebook person, I'm going to give a pitch out to Dave Hayes, the weatherman. He's great. He's the weather nut. Follow that guy. He's got many a follower. And it was a changing time in the end of winter, and I knew it was going to be a very warm day the next day, and it had been very cold. So I figured there was going to be a lot of fog. And I had gone out to see what happened right around sunrise. And then I looked around for context, and I needed somebody, and was lucky enough to find this person walking a dog on the dike. Landscapes really demand context, I think. If you can get it, I'll show another example of that coming up. So this is an image that I call Charlie's Tractor. That's the image that I'm so proud that we have raised so far, $1,160. Charlie is a farmer, the last kind of old school farmer in Northampton. It's a 20-acre field behind my house that Charlie farms. And he also farms 87 acres of corn on the banks of the river. And for me, this was really all about the broken axle. Charlie busted his axle. It's a big deal for a single farmer. And I'd gone out there at dusk, and technically what I did with this image was that's shot on a tripod. It's about a 30-second exposure. And I painted it in with an LED light. That's what allowed, and that length of that exposure provided some movement in the clouds. But what I really wanted to do was to catch the dignity and detail of that very old farm-all tractor that Charlie's been beating the heck out of for as long as I've been here. I couldn't not help show this image. It's from a women's march a few years back in Northampton. Images like this take time in the sense that I knew where to be when. And I'm very proud that this image is part of the permanent collection of Historic Northampton. There's a great exhibit down there on Main Street. And that is now a 13-foot print at Historic Northampton. They just did a spectacular job enlarging it. And people are coming in, finding themselves in it. But I love my town, and I love showing this image. While I was looking through images, I came across this is of downtown Tommy. And Tommy's a figure on the streets of Northampton. He is also a dog walker, and I've been wanting to find the right images for many, many years, and finally found this image, and just by chance and not, because I've been looking at Tommy for an awful long time. And you know, when he showed up with that dog, I just was overjoyed. I'm going to step a little further afield right now and start in Lisbon. And this is I call the Birdman of Lisbon. And I've been to Lisbon a couple of times in Portugal, and travel is changing some, at least until COVID hit. Lisbon really had been becoming overrun. And in the 4 years that I had between my two trips there, Lisbon had become quite a hot spot. So part of what I have to deal with is the amount of other people with cameras. There's too many damn cameras in the world. One of my lines, I speak at the New York Times Travel Show, and I've done that for about the past years. And I kind of start with that the bad news about travel photography is there's over 50 million pictures uploaded to Instagram every day, and everybody's photographing everything. And the good news is that the world reinvents itself every day with the people that occupy it. And so, you know, my thing is getting close to people. And I had a long conversation with this guy. I was probably with him for about a half an hour. And I looked for patterns, and he had great relationships with this bird. He actually is a funny guy that talks like a bird, moves like a bird sometimes. And I maybe have 20 images of a very similar image, but this was the one that worked. I'm going to go now to Taiwan, to the Alisan High Mountain Tea Pickers. And these are tough old women way up on the side of a hill. It's very hard to get there. And, you know, for me to get up to photograph them, it was kind of a humorous, it was incredibly difficult. And I fell a couple of times, and I think they were amused by me and let me get close. But these women work, you know, incredibly hard. And, you know, I'm both documenting images, not wanting to change what's happening. I know that, but at the same time, I am looking to tell a story. And this, for me, was the story to be told in Taiwan. Taiwan has done a spectacular job with the COVID virus. I think they've only had 360, if I'm correct, deaths in the entire nation. No lockdown. They were just very diligent. And I think they'll set a good lesson for us. If you ever have a chance to go to Taiwan, I highly recommend it. One of the safest and nicest places I've been. I've been a lot of places, and these are some extremely, extremely nice people. I could tell great stories about it, but I only have so much time. I'm going to go from here to, where am I? Alcalá de Henares. It's the birthplace of Cervantes, who's the author of Don Quixote. And this is actually the church, I believe, where he was married. It's the Cathedral de Santos Niños. It's a longer name than that, but I'm not going to go into it. I had seen this was a service that was happening, and kids were playing outside, but children are you have to be very careful in photographing children out in the world. People are suspicious. So again, I'm usually carrying 2 cameras with me. I carry a 24 to 105 and an 80 to 200 millimeter. They're heavy cameras, but I want to be seen as a photographer. I'm not trying to sneak images. I've hunted down evil politicians. I've staked out big drug deals. In those contexts, as a journalist, I'm okay with it. But for travel images of people, I really want to be respectful. I think it's quite important. And I had gone and found these kids' parents, and told them who I was and what I wanted to do. And they said, go ahead. The images, to me, this is a special images. They don't happen all the time. But again, there's a big interaction with me and that little girl up in the forefront. Next image is a shot of downtown Istanbul. which is just a spectacular city. The amount of history in Istanbul is kind of mind-blowing. The old Grand Market, the Grand Bazaar there is kind of the original mall, and I think there's 60 different entrances to 4,000 stores that are all underground. It's been going on for God knows how many years. This, though, I carry a tripod with me. It's a carbon fiber tripod, lighter than many and heavier than what I want. And I'm always kind of bitching about carrying it around, and it certainly comes in handy. This is when I need it. This is about a 2-minute exposure. It's a 200 millimeter lens, and that's what provides the trails within the traffic that's heading through it. Turkey's a troubling place. It's a beautiful people, beautiful city. They've got a lot of problems with refugees from Syria. They've got a horrible government. But if you get the chance to go there, go. Now, it wasn't whales that Mark was talking about, but polar bears. And this is in Norway, in Bergen. And it really was an image that I wasn't expecting to take. I had gone into a fur shop in Bergen and started talking with the owner of it. He kept indicating he had something special and would I want to go see it? And I said, sure. And when he led me down a long alleyway, up these wooden stairs to this old chain link, covered kind of door, which opened to a very expensive locking system. And when I went inside there, I was kind of gasped and I was horrified at this. This turned into actually one of the best-selling images I've had. The Natural Resources Defense Council used this image in a campaign to stop polar bear hunting. And it ran in well over 125 newspapers the last time that I checked. These polar bear skins sell for over $50,000 a piece, mostly by auction. The only other people that have been in there, he said to me, were the Chinese, were the only people that had money to buy these things. There was a small wine cooler. I knew it was kind of nervous because I knew it was an important image. I don't necessarily think this was a bad guy. I don't think he had fully thought out what he was doing. But at a certain point, he contacted me because his life was being destroyed. And I had put the name of his store within a post that I had done of it. And he asked me to take it down, which I did. But the image was quite satisfying to me in that, being able to do some good, make a little money, but mostly fight the good fight is, kind of the ultimate of what I hope to be able to do as a photographer. This is an image from Nova Scotia. It's Inverness, Nova Scotia. It's Joe Gillis. He's a lobsterman in Cape Breton. Is many generations of lobstermen. His kids work with him. I've taken about 3 trips out there photographing them on boats. I'll work the boat. I'll get seasick often. He shoots right near the cliffs, which are quite dramatic. And then I have a choice about when I'm going to use black and white or not. And it's really according to the, I check each time with what works. And I think for Joe, he got distracted by color. And it really was about him and the ropes and the traps. Mark, I see that I'm running out of time quickly. Is that true?
Oh, you got 5 minutes.
Well, that's not much. So I'm going to start going quicker.
Okay.
This is and I might go a little bit over, an image from Greenland. There's 2 images from Greenland. This was, I think, one of the favorite places I've been. I'm dying to go back because I know a lot of what I've seen has changed. It's in Ilulissat, and it's right at the edge of a calving, excuse my French, glacier. But for landscapes, again, you really need context to figure size. And for me, it's really all about this bird here on the left. I don't know if you can see my arrow. This is also from Greenland, sorry. And these are hunters coming back in their guillemots. I have no problem with people hunting as long as they're eating. This is how they make their living. These were the toughest guys I have ever met. I call them gentle, tough men. Sweet to their families, nice guys, but when they go out and it's 20 degrees below zero and they're on the ocean, they stick their hands in the sea to warm them up. It's just an amazing, amazing thing. Greenland is a wonderful thing. I have so many more images to show. This is a sacrifice in Chichicastenango in Guatemala. There's a long story behind this, which I wish I had time to tell right now, but I don't. I'm just going to keep on going, except that it was only through my good actions and relationships that I made that I was invited to this sacrifice. I did luck out on the knife on the edge, but that's a longer story. This is a picture from Tunisia. Tunisia is a spectacular country. I was there when Ben Ali was still the dictator there. And his image was oppressing and he was everywhere, but the people were fantastic. The Medinas are ancient, and I'm just looking for moments like this and then not fighting. You know, your camera will try to, if you leave it in automatic, it's going to try to balance out and lighten up everything. And if you get a chance to go manual, do it, because it really was about the silhouette that made this work. This is a picture from Chile. It's the Cementerio General de Santiago. It's one of the largest cemeteries in Latin America. There's over 2 million people that are buried here, established in 1821. It's somber. It's where Allende is buried and many of the disappeared from during the time of Pinochet. But again, I'm looking for some way to tell, how do I tell the story of such a large place? I had been photographing this. A woman came along to place flowers there. She knew I was shooting that. But again, I needed to find context. This is from, I'm gonna have to go through these pretty quickly. It's from Oporto in Portugal. But again, it's through nonverbal communication. I'm walking down the street. This is a very long lens. I saw this woman, I wanted this picture, I raised my hands. She gives me a nod, and again, it was a conversation that I could have to be able to do this, because I'm really not trying to impose myself on people when I don't. This is from Trujillo. It's actually, this is where one of the Game of Thrones was filmed. It's a beautiful town. But again, these kids have been running up and down this street for about a half an hour, and I just kind of watched patterns for what they were doing, and they seem to put up with me. And but unless you're watching and can anticipate, you're not going to be able to get images like that. This is an image from Santiago de Compostela, and it's one of the great pilgrimages in the world. And everybody shoots the front of this church. This is the rear of the church, at the back door. This one was reminded me of my Jewish grandmother. She could almost project as much guilt as my Jewish grandmother. Unfortunately, I'll stop apologizing, but I have so much more to say about so many of these images. So it's kind of the last trip I took to Spain before COVID. It's in Castile and Leon, in the heart of the Douro Rhine region. And this was a local harvest festival that I just happened upon. It's a small town with this castle on the hill, and it was just a family event. And everybody was eating a lot of food, and they started offering me a lot of food, and I had felt a little nervous about accepting it. I felt like I was crashing a wedding. But they were so generous, and I asked them why they were so generous in giving food to strangers, which happens all over Spain. And a gentleman came to me who I'd asked and gave me the best quote, and he said, when we give food to others, it's not only for them, it is for ourselves. It makes us feel human. This is an image from Japan. in Narita, and it's cooking squid. It's yearly, there's a pilgrimage to a variety of temples in this town, and it's not squid, it's yeah, eels. Really spectacular, but mostly I was showing this. I shoot a lot of food when I'm on the road, but this was also about how to balance flash with ambient exposure, which I really needed, and that's what captured the smoke as you're seeing.
Well, you should probably wind up with the next one or maybe two.
Okay, I'm going to go quickly. Civita, beautiful town in Italy that is disappearing from this hill. The Azores, Pico Island. It's a volcanic wonderland. Go if you can. 90-year-old gentleman, as we were walking through Pico, who just said, "Come on in," and gave us this incredibly strong homemade wine that he made, which is probably why he looks so happy and looks so healthy. Again in Taiwan, Longshan Temple, just trying to find light to give people room. This is 5 o'clock in the morning in, where the hell was I? Finland. Again, looking for stories. I was in a town in Cusco, the Justo, very small town. And this woman had come to the town fountain with her cat, and her cat followed her back, and I followed them. Maybe I'll end it right here. There's an awful lot more images, but this is in Fernando de Noronha, which is off the coast of Brazil. And I think it's closer to Africa than it is Brazil, just a spectacular place. And I am now riding off to the distance in the sunset. And we'll stop my share at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, we knew it was going to be fun to travel in the middle of COVID.
I wish I could show more.
What I don't think we knew was that we would get this combination of striking images, respect for the dignity of work, and real heart. And I'm blown away. And I encourage people to write to us and tell us you want to do another thing with Paul.
Sure, I'll be happy to.
Fine with me. But now a word from our sponsor. Northampton Neighbors is a member-based nonprofit offering volunteer services, programs, and events to older people who want to continue living independent, engaged lives in their homes and communities with a little neighborly help. We launched a little over 2.5 years ago, and by the time COVID-19 arrived, we had delivered over 1,700 services to our over 900 members and provided a variety of ways to socialize with other members. During COVID-19, we cannot deliver in-person services until it's safe to do so for our volunteers and members. But we're still going strong with regular calls to members who are feeling isolated. Recently, letters to members from local children and teens. 95% of the services we offer are from Nina Kleinberg, which are tech help, and the speaker series, which now meets twice a month. Unlike almost all organizations like ours, Northampton Neighbors has no dues, fees, charges of any kind for any of the services or social opportunities we provide. That means we have to be creative and dogged to find funds elsewhere to keep the organization going. We hope you'll make a contribution to Northampton Neighbors. You can donate online at our website, northamptonneighbors.org, either with a credit card or PayPal, or you can mail a check to our address, which rather than giving you now, because you're not going to have time to write it down, it's on the website. And we hope you'll consider becoming a sustaining member at any amount. And we have a special opportunity for today's talk. Paul has donated a terrific photograph of his to Northampton Neighbors for this event, Charlie's Tractor, which you saw earlier. This is a big photograph, 17 by 22. It'll be printed on archival paper by Pivot Media with an estimated value of about $500. Anyone who makes a contribution to Northampton Neighbors of any amount, postmarked or received online by August 31st, will be entered into our random drawing, with the winner announced at our next Northampton Neighbors speaker event when Catherine Graham speaks on September 11th. And now we're going to go to questions. The first one was from Ellen Augarten, and she wanted to know where you were standing, and I think it was for the bridge demonstration. I'm not sure. I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Ellen's a great photographer, by the way. For the bridge, I was standing on the corner of Bridge Road and Damon Road. She might have been asking about the downtown picture of the Women's March, and I was standing on the steps of City Hall. And Ellen, if you can hear me, I was standing extremely close to the speaker because I really was trying to get a sense of people's attention and eyes upon me.
And if we haven't guessed the place that you wanted to hear about, just chat again and we'll get it next time, you know, in a minute.
You said the protest shot at the police station.
Oh, the protest shot at the police station was on a very rickety balcony above TD Bank. I don't know how to describe it. It was near Michael Cusac's apartment. But so that's the parking lot behind TD Bank, and then there's a way to, there's a alleyway that goes up there, and from there I entered a stairway to go up to the balcony and crawled out there.
We had a question about where the picture with the kids and the umbrellas were taken. Someone wrote the birth city of Cervantes.
Yes, that is correct.
What's the name of that village?
I would have to go back.
Okay.
Hold on. It's
Acala de Henares.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I was just about to say that.
Who's giving me that information?
It's Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
So we have another question. Lynn Shapiro said, "These are wonderful. Do you sometimes offer images to your subjects?"
Do I? Yes, I do.
Okay.
Answer is yes, I do.
I was asking specifically, actually, because I know Mateso, who works at River Valley,
Yeah.
and you took a wonderful picture of him.
Find him, get him in touch with me, and I'll give him a file.
Okay, I don't know how to do that, but I know how to get in touch with him. I was talking to him earlier this afternoon, but.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, if you've talked to him, I'm not hard to find. I'm ridiculously easy to find. You can find me, just either Google me, do it through my website, or and I'd be happy to send him a file. I could send it to you.
Okay, either way. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Jody asked, "Are you multilingual, or do you have translators travel with you?"
That is a very good question. I speak good enough Spanish to get myself in trouble often, but enough that I can get by, and I can speak Spanish fairly well. Often I have a translator. Absolutely. So the answer is yes.
So that's it for the chat questions. Now we can take questions from people, you know, live. And if it turns out there aren't any, we've handled our time so efficiently. We have 15 minutes, and I would be up for showing more photographs.
Huh. Well, I could probably show a few more if you want me to.
So Nina, I can't see everybody, but can you see if there are any people who want to ask questions?
People can raise their hands digitally, or they can unmute themselves. And if they unmute themselves, I will spotlight them and they can ask their question.
I have a question for Paul. The question is, when you're on, this is Rob Weir. It says Emily Weir up in the corner, but this is Rob. The question I have is, you talked about anticipating shots when you were when you're looking at protests and so forth. This is a really simple question. I'm wondering if you have a go-to setting where you know that you're not going to have a lot of time to set it up and all of that. So you keep a camera set at a certain go-to setting? And if so, what is that?
That's a good question. So I generally, I'll assess the light when I get anywhere. I'm concerned with shutter speed often. I don't want blurry images. Photography right now, a lot of people are hyper about small apertures and blurry backgrounds for portraits. That's a whole other thing. I generally, so I'll set a shutter speed that I'm comfortable with depending on what lens I'm using. Generally, you don't want to use a shutter speed that's lower than the millimeter of your lens. So for example, if I'm shooting, my long lens is a 70 to 200 millimeter lens, I want to be at least a 200th of a second for my shutter speed. And I'll adjust my film sensitivity around that. And I'll try to be right around, each lens will have a sweet spot in it as to where it's sharpest. For that lens, it's around f11. And that's also, I'm deciding about whether I want, how much depth I want in the image. If I want a subject that's isolated from its background, I'm using a more open f-stop or a smaller one, depending on how people read that. But often, that all being said, I'll set my shutter speed within auto that I then manipulate after that. So if I have time, I've taken an image and then I adjust it up or down a variety of stops depending on how the light's changing, and often the light is changing. It's rare when light remains the same for longer than 5 minutes, often changing more than that. Sometimes it's a bright sunny day and it stays the same and you can set one exposure and you're good to go. But my basic standard is to try to use a shutter speed that's going to be, give me stable images, whatever lens that I'm using. If I'm shooting, I shoot with a 17 to 35. I shoot zooms a lot because I want the range. I can't always move back and forth. So 17 to 35 gives me a shutter speed I can use. At the minimum, I could go down to a 20th or a 30th of a second and I'd be okay being wide open. But that's my basic standard. And I set it via shutter speed. Not everybody does the same thing, but maybe as I get older, I'm not as steady with my hands. I do have stabilization on most of my lenses. If you have a stabilized lens, if you know what I mean, it's like a little gyroscope in the lens. That's not going to stop action though. If, below a 30th of a second, you're going to see movement in people, or motion will not be frozen. And depending on whether you're using flash or not, you can use the flash to do it. So I would say shutter speed, and I get into auto, and then I often will get off of that into a manual setting and adjust my f-stop from there.
We had another couple of questions on chat. Jean Henry Hoos asked, do you crop photos?
Yes, I do. I often have a problem with my commercial clients because I tend to crop to how I want things to be. I need, for when you're shooting with it for a magazine or a commercial client or a newspaper, you need to be able to leave room for type and for headlines. I tend to crop photos depending on what the situation is. Sometimes if it's moving too fast, I shoot wide and I will crop later on. I would say I generally know what I want when I'm shooting it. Whether I can get there or not, I have to fight against cropping sometimes. There's old school standards of some photographers who shoot full frame and that's it. And that's okay. I'm a working guy. I got to tell a story, and I'm absolutely fine with cropping photos. So the answer is yes.
We have two questions that I think follow up on the previous discussion about shutter speed or whatever it was. One of them asks, do you shoot shutter priority then? And the next question is, do you bracket your images? Since I have no idea what that means, I'm reading them together.
I think these are very good questions. There are times when I use a handheld light meter and I find the best reading and I set it up manually. Mostly I shoot shutter priority. That's what I do. If I'm on a tripod, that's fine. If I'm shooting portraits sometimes in a studio, I'll want to maintain a certain f-stop. I'll use aperture priority sometimes. You also can use variable ISO, and whoever's asking this might know what I'm talking about. So you can vary the sensitivity of the sensor in your camera. And for example, if I was shooting today, I'm going to guesstimate right now it's about a 200th of a second at f11. That's your kind of standard sunny day shot. I might set that and then set it on variable ISO. Well, then it'll maintain those settings, and it'll change the ISO to be more or less sensitive to maintain that exposure. As digital cameras have become better, the high ISO or the more sensitive settings are becoming better and better and better. It's quite surprising and amazing. I hope that answers it. If there's any follow-up question to that, that'd be fine.
And then there was a question about whether you bracket your images.
Oh, I bracket my images rarely when I'm shooting a fast-moving event. Bracketing your images usually means doing one above and one below, doing whatever the exposure says you should do, and then bracketing to kind of save yourself by shooting f-stop that's higher and lower. Some people bracket images and then combine those images for still life pictures, for landscapes. Many, if not most, or I would say many landscape photographers do that. And I will bracket if I'm on a tripod and I'm doing landscapes and I have the opportunity. Yes, I do. If it's an editorial shoot, no, I do not. But I will vary my exposure because I'm getting constant feedback from what I'm doing to see if I'm doing the right thing.
Good. I should point out that all of our viewers will be quizzed on the technical aspects of this presentation afterwards. Are there any other questions?
I see a raised hand.
I think they have to unmute themselves. I'm not seeing them right now.
Elaine Parnett is talking, but he's not unmuted. You see him?
Nina?
I'm requesting that Elaine unmute herself.
Can't hear.
Let's see if there's anything else. Well, hopefully that gets figured out. Any other questions?
Well, I'd love to get his question though.
Maybe they're going to do something now.
Could
Yep.
somebody write unmute? And a
I
piece
think
of
they're
paper?
unmuted.
I think I'm unmuted. Is that
There
correct?
you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there particular circumstances where you would choose to use gelatin type film rather than digital?
You know, I was a film shooter for most of my life. I started at UPI, United Press International. I shot Tri-X, black and white film, a lot of color slide film. I spent a good portion of my life in the darkroom. I came to hate the darkroom. I never want to go back to the darkroom. I think that digital is, and there's a lot of younger people that want to learn on film right now, and I think that's a fantastic thing. I don't think film is as forgiving as digital is. I have some older cameras that I will shoot film for the joy of it now and then, but I'm not using it in any kind of working situation at this point. I just think digital is that much better. When I first started out, I was a diehard and I thought I would never go digital. Now I am. And, you know, coming from a guy that had a my UPI transmitter was a drum, basically a drum scanner. I would type out my captions. I'd use whiteout to spell check them, which was an awful lot of whiteout for me. And I'd put it on the drum and I'd spin it around. 45 minutes later, it would transmit. Now that I can do that over my computer on a laptop just amazes me. But so the quick answer is no, but there's nothing wrong with film. And, one of my lines is it doesn't matter what you're shooting through, it matters what you're looking at. And that's far more important to me.
I know that there are a couple of more questions, but we're out of time and they're a little technical. I don't know if there's a way for them to get those questions to you.
I would say that if anybody wants to email me questions, they can maybe do it through you and you could email me them. If I'm not sure if I should be. But I would be happy to answer any questions that people have via email. Oh, absolutely.
Actually, the best way is for them to email the main Northampton Neighbors number, because
Okay.
I even think they're not going to find my email.
Okay, I'd be overjoyed to do that and will promise to answer them. I like talking about this stuff, so I'll definitely do it.
So we have to wind down. I want to thank you, Paul, again. I want to thank everyone for coming. Yep.
I want to thank the Northampton Neighbors for the fantastic work that you do. And I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this.
And I would say if anyone would like to have Paul come back for another go round, send in an email to Northampton Neighbors. I know I would.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you.
Thanks you. Bye-bye all.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye now.
Those are beautiful pictures. Wow.